Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Join us each week as sports scientist and founder of Athletica.ai, Dr. Paul Laursen, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Marjaana Rakai, coach and cyclist Paul Warloski, and everyday athletes discuss training, racing, and improving health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello, and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. Today, we're talking about breathing. It's one of those natural functions that we do without thinking, but what if your breathing patterns can help your performance as an everyday athlete? Paul, how does your breathing affect your body and mind?
Yeah. So again, let's just think really basic. Without our breathing, we wouldn't be able to exchange the two primary gases that we need for respiration or metabolism. So first of all, we're ventilating our lungs. We're taking a breath in to take on our oxygen for transport into the blood, and then likewise, we're removing the carbon dioxide that is been a metabolic byproduct ultimately, and a buffer for the body. And that carbon dioxide removal is equally as important. So that's the primary way that it's affecting the body systemically. But interestingly, it also seems to have this mindful aspect to breathing as well, and it goes back to and I'm certainly no expert here, but just a bit of a hack, and have my own sort of self interest in the mindfulness aspect of breathing. And it also tends to play some sort of role in keeping us present. It's something that it seems we can lock into in any given moment to be, a word we'll use today, mindful. And that's sort of the secondary purpose is to be mindful and present. Because it actually has it has both this voluntary and involuntary control. So before I even said those words, and you're listening to this podcast, your involuntary system was just breathing, as it does, and it still is right now. But at any given moment, we can voluntarily control our breath. And when we take that voluntary moment to control our breath, we have to become mindful and present in doing that. So, and this is where things can kind of slow down. We can slow our monkey mind down a little bit, control things, and be mindful.
Can you explain what mindfulness is and why is it important for endurance athletes?
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting you asked this question, because the podcast I recorded just before this one was with Johannes Butcher, and Paul actually put me on to Johannes because Paul wanted to know how basically we can, control or help to enhance our longevity and our wellness. And Johannes is an expert in that whole area of exercise and aging. And it was so interesting. One of the points that he really made in the podcast was, we always think about exercising, and we've got to keep moving, right? And this is what Athletica is all about, right? It's a training plan, automated AI that gives you this ideal exercise to rest, sort of pause. And we're always harping on about the movement aspect. You got to exercise more. You got to do HIIT exercise. You got to get in the gym. You got get out there and do your L2 session. But the point that Johannes made that was really interesting to me was around the importance of the recovery aspect. We say it a lot, but he was really getting into the hardcore science in explaining why. He was explaining it to me in terms of stressors and this concept called hormesis. And basically that if you don't have this calmness and this rest period in between those signals of exercise training, you don't adapt, and the stressors keep going and they keep stressing you. And it actually, you create more of a problem than a solution. So mindfulness allows us to be present, to be calm, and to receive the exercise stressors that we know are so beneficial for all the things, again, that we spoke of to Johanna and Johannes on the podcast, enhancing your VO2 max, increasing your muscle strength, improving your balance, lowering your chances of getting a chronic illness like cardiovascular disease or cancer or Alzheimer's. All these things are important. So if you can be mindful, you can control that stress, receive the good stress, become more resilient to it, and enhance your exercise performance and longevity.
Yeah, totally. Like when you do meditation, they often say like you're being present with your inhale, then pay attention to that pause after your inhale, then exhale, have a like focus on the pause. And it's actually in the pause that the gas exchange happens, right?
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think it's basically, we see a change in what's called partial pressures. So there's these pressures of these gases in both our body and in the atmosphere. And in the process of ventilating or breathing out, there is all of a sudden sort of this change of that partial pressure, because as you breathe, then the pressure changes at the exact pause phase. Like, we can do this together, right? We can take a breath in, and there's a period of time at the top of that breath where there's still, everything's in dynamic flux always, right? So we've taken in the atmospheric air, which has a high partial pressure of oxygen, and we've brought that into our lungs to a region of lower partial pressure of oxygen, higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide. And then there's that exchange that occurs. I think it's always kind of occurring. It's always in dynamic flux, but it's always kind of going from high to low, these partial pressures, oxygen and CO2. So I don't know if there's one actual place, but it's always kind of fluxing through.
Right. But I think what they are trying to teach with the meditation is to pay attention to those pauses. And we can take the same principle and like apply that to training as well, that the pauses when you actually recover are important, and being mindful about not just the training aspects, because we're all very good at like following the instructions and following your training prescription, but then we forget about recovery. Pay attention to the recovery so that you can actually go and do your next session with better quality. And I see this all the time, like as a busy human beings, we forget to pay attention to that recovery phase.
We do. This is what Johannes and I were talking about. It's like the only thing everyone is focusing on really mostly is the exercise training, and kind of doing more. But and it was, again, I'll keep reflecting on this, because this was Paul. I gotta thank you again for telling me to go after Johannes. It was great. It was super interesting. But there's basically VO2 max or cardiorespiratory fitness, right? We want to hold on to that. If we look to Peter Attia's Outlive book, like, there's no doubt about it. You want to try to keep your VO2 max higher than your age for as long as you can, kind of thing, right? Like that's sort of my goal these days. But there's these two critical periods of time in life where we see larger rates of decline of VO2 max. One is kind of this age between 35 and 45, really falls. The other one seems to be 60 to 65, really steep declines we see if we kind of follow the literature as a whole, the research literature as a whole. Why those periods of time? Why 35 to 45? Why 60 to 65? think about it, 35 to 45, high stress times in life usually, right? You're really, you're trying to do so much, fit so much in. You've got kids often. You're really trying to punch it in work because it's usually your prime time for kind of earning at those ages. Well, and all of that stress doesn't allow you very much to recover in those times. And as a result, you're not, so again, it's a strong indicator that at that period of time when stress is so high, you're not a lot, it supports the hypothesis that we're just saying. There's not a lot of time for mindfulness and relaxation and recovery to be able to accept any sort of stressors. You're probably not also able to find the time to get out and train as well. But the combination of the two is just kind of pretty profound for that reduction in VO2 max, in cardiorespiratory fitness that we know is so important for health, longevity, and performance. So yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with this, but it's like it just supports kind of the importance of mindfulness and meditation in the whole process that we're working on and being more efficient and better humans.
So to go back to how you originally were talking about breathing, voluntary and involuntary, we can breathe without mindfulness, but mindfulness requires more practiced breathing. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I think they kind of go hand in hand. So I think when you're meditating, you can meditate on anything, but as far as I understand, like you can enhance the process of mindfulness if you follow your breath. Like it's usually the way to kind of start the whole process and slow the monkey mind down. Right. So it's like, it's a good thing to do for, say, 5 or 10 minutes a day at some period of time. Could be before you try to fall asleep or at some, point in the day. But you can start by just following your breath. And, I think Marjaana is going to explain box breathing potentially as one way. So why don't you explain box breathing for us, Marjaana?
Yeah, so box breathing there are a few different ways to do it, but usually, like when I started, it was count of 4, breath in. So breathing in and count to 4, then hold your breath for count of 4, then exhale for count of 4, and then at the bottom, if you look at it, it's like a box. At the bottom, hold your breath for count of 4. So, and as you get better at breathing and holding your breath, you can add to 5. So count to 5, count to 6, and extend. And I find like this is what I do. Like I do it in the morning, and then if I have a monkey brain, I try to do it during the day, and especially in the evening before going to bed. It really helpful with the racing thoughts and
totally. And if you're under a period of high stress, if you wake up in the middle of the night, that's another perfect time to box breathe and just, as opposed to getting up. Oftentimes, if you sit there and box breathe and meditate, you will fall back to sleep. So again, you can enhance the amount of sleep that you're getting that we know is so important, as opposed to, God forbid, reaching for your phone wherever that's laying in the, that would just that's the worst thing that you can do, because you're adding blue light. You're totally waking yourself back up again, right? Like, you get rid of those, meditate on those problems as well. Or, and breathing is I guess the first step. So I think that answers the first part of your question there, Paul. So that's, we're grabbing hold of the present through the breathing, and it's hard to do, right? It's hard to keep paying attention to that breath. Like it's so easy to just say it, but you go and try, like your mind will soon wander. The monkey mind wants to fall off the track. So I think meditation per se, as opposed to, I guess, breathing meditation. Meditation would be almost the focus on the thoughts that are appearing in the mind at any given time. So as I understand it. So it's like, if you do that box breathing that Marjaana was saying, you're focusing on the 4 seconds and the breath. But then it won't be, it won't be a few seconds before another thought comes in. So what you can do is you can almost observe that thought, or you could observe that feeling, whatever might be coming into your mind at that point in time. You look at it, look back at it. Another cool thing you can do is you can look at the looker. So you can look at what is looking at that, that sensation and that's coming to your mind at that point in time. That's another thing that you can do, and that's a nice little trick I've found helps me get control of my monkey mind a little bit as well. So, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think mindfulness and meditation is playing with the thoughts that are in your head and to get control of being present and control of that recovery.
You said something interesting there. Look at the looker. Oh, can you explain that more?
Oh, I'm forgetting the name of the person that I picked up. It was John Kelly potentially. It was in the Sam Harris podcast, but it was a mindfulness guru, and he had this really cool way of getting you to look at the looker. So he just you went through various different means of on the Waking Up app from Sam Harris, and he just kind of something's looking at whatever's going on right now. You're listening to this podcast. You are, there is something that is looking or seeing or hearing what we're saying. So who's hearing? You look back at that. You look back at that at any given moment. And what that is, I'm not sure, but it is a fascinating kind of concept. But and it allows you though to be present, to be mindful, and to just be in the zone ultimately when you look back at the looker. So it really helps me get control of my monkey mind.
When I'm teaching a yoga class, I often start, we are in a seated position, but we're trying to focus on our breathing. I've done meditation and yoga for a lot of years, and I really struggle with it because my brain is so ADHD that it's hard to focus on anything. And so what we try to do in the moments of before, as we start class, is thinking of our breath as kind of a cone that starts at in your nose and in your nasal cavities, and the tip of the cone, your belly expands and your back expands as you inhale. And then the exhale is relaxing that and being passive. So it's an active inhale and a passive exhale. And that's something that I do often too when I'm in the middle of the night when I wake up. But that is another way, that's getting at your diaphragmatic breathing of that your diaphragm is at the the spot right where your rib cage comes together and it expands. And we often try to, in the yoga class, imagine as if that diaphragm was a balloon, and as you inhaled, it expanded your belly and down into your hips. And that's another way of kind of helping you feel through or imagine through that belly breathing. It helps you calm your whole nervous system down. That's a way that has worked for me personally, and it works for the class as well.
And I remember, so I think from the book, James Nestor, Breathe is an excellent one to get. And I'll just, a couple of the key points, like many of that we've already sort of spoken on, but a couple points. Breathing through the nose is very parasympathetically stimulating. So as opposed to mouth breathing, one way you can switch up your breathing is to breathe through your nose. And just even that process, and just try it right now. Try breathing through your nose versus taking a mouth breath. And one, you'll notice clearly one is more calming than the other. So nose breathing, obviously, you want to work on that as much as you can. Even when you're doing your recovery L1, L2, the more you can nose breathe, the better. That almost kind of controls, unless you've got nasal passage issues, which I used to have, had surgery for it. And so I was hit by a car in a triathlon, actually, and it shattered my zygomatic arch and my face. 20 years later, I went to the doctor to get it looked at, and he asked me, were you a boxer in your youth? And I said, no, I wasn't, but I was hit by a car and smashed. So yeah, and anyways, had that surgery, opened up my nasal passages, and what a difference, right? So I'm always able to breathe through my nose now, but not everyone is, for various different reasons. Worth seeing Western medicine for that one, let me tell you. So nose breathing, fantastic. What are some of the other messages in that one? Oh, actually, even a larger breath in, right? Like Paul said, so a breathe in to like full breath, there's increased ventilation that's actually occurring. So a larger amount of oxygen gets diffused into the bloodstream from those higher breathing, ventilation. What am I looking for? Like a maximal breath in kind of thing, right? You can ventilate areas of the lung that don't usually get ventilated, and this can enhance the oxygenation of your bloodstream. So those are, I think, are some of the two big ones. And then the fact that all of this is trainable. So the things that Paul's talking about, like, breathing and mindfulness, but even things like, we've spoken on other podcasts about the breathe way better bag, and increasing our respiratory muscle strength to breathe deeper. This enhances our VO2 max at high respiratory flow rates. So there's lots that can be done in the whole area of breathing to enhance both our mindfulness and our cardiorespiratory fitness and performance.
So let's look at what are the specifics that athletes can do. What are some of the challenges that athletes face when starting a mindfulness practice, and how can they overcome them?
So I started meditating about 4 years ago, following an app, Calm app, and it's helped a lot. I can't bring myself to, bringing myself to meditate 10 minutes without it. So I use it. And even with that, it's so hard to keep your mind from running away. But usually they teach you different techniques to keep your mind with the breathing, which is great. But I've also started to experiment with walking meditation. So I go for a walk and I listen to a meditation that helps me so much more, because I'm used to moving, right? So moving your body just rhythmically, like walking, is amazing. Like I can stay focused a lot longer and gain more benefits, I would say, than sitting down meditating and struggling the whole time. But I also enjoy swimming because I'm under the water and it's just me and the line, and it's very meditative for me. And I would encourage everybody to challenge their breathing with breathing to every 3 stroke, every 5, and increase that, because it's helping you also with the respiratory muscles. So if you normally breathe to every 3 strokes, extend that to 5, and then play around. Next time, maybe you can do half a pull length with breathing to every 7th and up to 9. Like I can do up to 9, but that's still a little bit of a struggle. But you can see when you start getting better at it, you can extend it from 5 to 7. 7 starts to feel nice and not easy, but easier than before. Then you extend to 9. I love that one. That's always fun to do at the end of a session.
Those are great, Marjaana. I play around with those as well, with my swimming, with my walking. I would also say the same with my easy rides, my L1, L2 recovery rides, the same sort of thing. It's just, inevitably, whatever problem I've had, it's gone after 20 to 30 minutes of just moving and riding. So there's something about movement that's so beneficial for the mind. Even though as a pure physiologist, I always talk about the physiology behind it all. But yeah, ultimately, I think we can conclude, and it's a key point, is that the mind and the body are 100% linked, and this podcast is a clear example of that. I think the only other one I would add is that even also doing VO2 max type sets, whatever VO2 max set is your flavor, almost by default, you need to focus on the intensity, and you can also be focusing on your respiratory muscles. In a VO2 set, by default, when you're in the red zone, you want to be ventilating quite quickly. There should be like purposeful ventilation that's actually occurring. And it's no wonder that we almost always feel better after we've done a high intensity interval training session, right? Because you've had to be present to achieve the objective of that. And there's all these endorphins and whatnot that are released, but also you've had to be mindful for that whole time. You've had to be purposeful in pushing out the power or pace that you're after, and your respiration rate and depth has had to be very, very high as well. You've ventilated new areas of the lung that you haven't in the past. So again, it's, whether you know it or not, you have to almost be you're going through a form of mindfulness at that point in time when you're doing your red zone work.
And I've also noticed that in practicing with the breathing bag, because I have the same one, the Breathe Right bag, is that helps me breathe more into my belly, because you're breathing through your mouth in that case, not through your nose, but you're breathing through your mouth. And if I can breathe through my belly and practice breathing more quickly, that helps with the VO2 max efforts, so that I'm still breathing through my belly and not just, up through my chest where I'm here, exactly. But I'm still, I'm able to, and that really encourages a lot of the mindfulness as well, even in that kind of a stressful situation. So here are our 3 takeaways for this week. Breathing, it shows us that your mind and body are linked, and that athletes can improve their focus and concentration during training, during racing with focused breathing. And we'll have a podcast episode about that coming up. But number 2, the purposeful breathing the mindful breathing can help us really improve our stress management, reduce anxiety, but it takes practice and it takes time to build up that effectiveness. We can't just learn it at once. We need to practice that on a daily basis. And then finally, mindfulness improves our capacity to recover from our hard efforts, which allow us to, increase our fitness, increase our VO2 max, so that we can take on that training stress. That is all for this week. Thank you for listening, and join us next week for the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training questions in the comments in our social media. Thank you for taking a moment to give us a 5-star review. Paul, Marjaana, and I are professional endurance sport coaches with limited availability. Contact us in the links below in the show notes to set up an appointment to talk about your training. For Marjaana Rakai, Dr. Paul Laursen, I'm Paul Warloski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform, Athletica.ai. And thanks.